Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of News Dose, where I keep you up to date with all of the latest gaming news and, all that hype surrounding Half-Life Alyx? Well yeah, it's true, it's a fantastic game. I've put a number of hours into it so far, and truly, it is astounding on what Valve achieved with Half-Life Alyx, and yes, we do have some more Half-Life news today, so we will discuss that here in just a moment. Also, we got plenty of Sony-related news today, including a PlayStation Plus leak, a new patent that may take advantage of the PlayStation 5's solid-state drive, and yes, there are some new details about the Silent Hills rumor floating around as of last week. Starting off though, let's go over some Nintendo-related news. Yesterday, I talked about Animal Crossing New Horizons and what a huge success it has been so far over in the UK, and so much so that it has become the fastest selling Nintendo Switch game of all time over in the UK. Well, it appears this has been echoed over in Japan as well. Over its first 3 days, it is the best launch for the Nintendo Switch in Japan. This means it has outsold both Pokemon Sword and Shield, as well as Super Smash Bros. Ultimate in the same time frame. Of course, Pokemon Sword and Shield sold 1.3 million copies in the same time frame, meaning that Animal Crossing has already sold more than that in Japan alone, which is honestly, that's quite shocking. I've always known that Animal Crossing was a big franchise, but to see it outpace Pokemon Sword and Shield, that to me is absolutely insane, and I'm curious if it will also outpace it in the United States as well. Really, my biggest question though will be, how good will its legs be? Can it outsell Pokemon Sword and Shield Lifetime? If I were to bet myself, I would say that Pokemon would end up selling more Lifetime, but I could end up being wrong there. Either way though, Animal Crossing is off to a very hot start. It's an extremely high quality game and it's selling fantastically well. And speaking of selling well, the thing about that is that Nintendo has been having some stock problems here recently, considering everything that's happening in the world right now. But so far, it really seems to have only had a big effect in Japan, or at least so far, as over the last month or two, the standard Nintendo Switch has been sold out in Japan. However, the Switch Lite seems to be doing just fine there, but now it appears the United States is also having some Switch stock problems, and this really could not have been worse timing considering Animal Crossing did just release, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking to buy a new Switch for Animal Crossing. Nonetheless though, if you go out to eBay or Amazon now, a lot of scalpers are trying to jack up the price of the Switch, and right now if you want to buy a new Switch, you're looking at paying a premium price of around $450 to even $500. It truly is absurd that people are taking advantage of this situation right now, and with so many people stuck at home and looking for ways to entertain themselves, it's such a shame that if they want to buy a new Switch, then they have to pay a premium price for it. I'm a collector myself, so I'm never really a big fan of scalpers, but it is what it is. It does seem like Switch Lites are still in stock, and you can go pick up one of those for around $200, so even if you can't get a standard Switch right now, there are still options out there, thankfully. Now moving on, let's talk a little bit about Half-Life Alyx, and right away I have to say, it's a great game. If you've played it yourself, let me know how you're liking the new Half-Life in the comments below. Nonetheless, there are a few things we need to discuss about Half-Life, including Alyx's success, as well as why we have never seen Half-Life Episode 3. This has been a question for years and years. But yes, that's right, Valve has finally vocalized why Half-Life Episode 3 has not happened up to this point, and no, it's not because Valve hates the number 3. Rather, it seems Valve ran into a few different issues when it came to Half-Life Episode 3. The first of which is because they were developing a new engine at the time, Source 2. This is something that Valve has had troubles with in the past when it comes to developing Half-Life side by side with a new engine, and because of this, it took them far longer to release Half-Life than they had originally planned. So from that point forward, they did not want to develop a new Half-Life game side by side with a new engine. Of course, Source 2 was finished in 2015, and then Alyx started development in 2016, releasing in 2020, so the timeline here actually does add up. Once they did finish their newest engine, it didn't take them too long to push forward and make a new Half-Life game. With that said, there is more to this story though. According to Dario Casali, Valve's level designer, they actually started making Half-Life an episodic game because they wanted to release content to players more frequently, and unfortunately we know how that ended up turning out. Half-Life 2 ended on a huge cliffhanger, and to this day we still don't know what will happen next. The problem was that with each episode they released, the scope got bigger and bigger with each episode, and by the point of episode 3, it felt more like a sequel than just a small expansion. And even though unfortunately episode 2 ended with a big cliffhanger, they were unable to wrap it up in a way they wanted to, and as high as quality as they wanted it to be. And to me it sounds more like they just kept scrapping ideas, as he did confirm they did try to work on a Half-Life game at several points, but because they didn't feel like the game was good enough or ambitious enough, they ended up putting the game on hold indefinitely. And that is something else to this, because he also says that Half-Life is meant to solve interesting problems, and that Valve doesn't just want to crank out Half-Life games to meet quarterly numbers. Hence why we saw Half-Life Alyx to solve interesting problems on new technology. Dario Casali basically says that releasing episodic content on a regular basis just did not match up with the ambition for the Half-Life project. But, and there is a big but here, he does note that Valve is hoping with the release of Half-Life Alyx that Valve has turned a corner in terms of long wait times. And he even says that they have only scratched the surface in Half-Life Alyx on what Source 2 their engine is capable of. So with that said, I do think now it's very likely we may see a new Half-Life game much sooner this time around. The question for me is, will they continue to do virtual reality Half-Life games, or go back to the standard format? We are seeing Valve have a lot of success with Half-Life Alyx. Their virtual reality headset, the Valve Index, has been selling out practically since Alyx was first announced. We got news over the weekend that Alyx has already sold 300,000 copies before it even released. Just yesterday, it broke a record for the most concurrent players for a VR title on Steam at 43,000 players. It also scored a 92 on Metacritic, so Alyx is having a lot of success, and I'm very interested to see what Valve does next. Hey, maybe we can finally get Half-Life 3 after all, and maybe Valve can make it as ambitious as they have always wanted it to be. After all, it does seem like that was one of the major reasons we haven't seen Episode 3 or a Half-Life 3. They just were not able to make it as ambitious as they wanted it to be. In other news though, and this is something that a lot of fans may not want to hear, but you know those Silent Hills rumors that started popping up a week or two ago? We actually talked about this on the channel, but if you missed it, there was a lot of reports coming out saying that Sony was working with Konami to develop a new Silent Hills game, and that Sony was even looking to reboot PT with the help of Hideo Kojima. That to me was a really questionable part to it, but we also saw Jack of Controllers, the website, say that they had heard from their sources that Sony was also trying to acquire Castlevania and Metal Gear Solid, and as I said in my video, to me that makes no sense just because Konami is actually using the Castlevania franchise right now. They have that Castlevania Netflix series, and they just released that portable, the mobile Castlevania Symphony of Night as well just a couple weeks ago, so business-wise, it doesn't make a lot of sense to sell the Castlevania franchise. I could see the Silent Hills part being true where they partner up together with Sony, but not so much the rest of it. But Konami, however, has quickly dispelled this rumor, saying this: "We're aware of all the rumors and reports, but can confirm they are not true. I know it's the answer your fans may not want to hear." So there it is. It's now highly doubtful that Sony has a direct hand on the Silent Hills franchise, and because this rumor has turned out to be false, Sony likely is not trying to acquire Metal Gear or the Castlevania franchise either, which was kind of always doubtful from the get-go. With that said, Konami did say that they're not completely closing the door on the franchise, it's just not the way it's being reported on currently. I would assume this means they still have plans for Silent Hills, which insider Dusk Golem claims that they are, But I think what's happening here is that Konami is saying that the rumors about Sony and it being a new episodic game may just not be true. Either way though, for you Silent Hills fans, I do hope you get some good news sooner rather than later. I know it's a big franchise for horror fans, and I would like to see Konami kind of return to form. I know they're kind of known for being a pachinko machine by this point, but hopefully they can put out a new Silent Hills game sooner rather than later. Now onto the PlayStation stuff. There was a PlayStation Plus leak. Apparently PlayStation Access accidentally had a video posted on unlisted, or it went public early or something like that, but they did reveal the PlayStation Plus games for April early. The video was taken down shortly after. Of course though, there was some people that has already seen the video, and the leak has Uncharted 4 and Dirt Rally 2.0 releasing for PlayStation Plus in April, which is actually a really good month. I loved Uncharted 4 personally, and really just the entire Uncharted franchise, so if you haven't played that game for whatever reason by this point, definitely do so. I imagine most people who wanted to play that game has done so already, but again, it's a great game, so I'm glad to see it go to PlayStation Plus. Also, Dirt Rally 2.0 is a high-quality racing game, so it's just a good month overall. Also, Sony did update the PlayStation 5's website, placing the PlayStation 5 release window for this holiday. This is actually important right now. We did see Xbox do the same thing last week, placing the Series X in the holiday window after accidentally putting Thanksgiving on their website, though they quickly fixed that and later changed it to holiday of 2020. But yes, now both the PlayStation 5 and the Series X, according to their own respective websites, remains to be released during the holiday window. So why is this important? Well, that's because with everything happening in the world right now, there is a chance that both the PlayStation 5 and the Series X could end up being delayed. However, right now, both Microsoft as well as Sony seems to be very confident that they will still make the holiday release, which is great news. We'll have to keep an eye out on this one, and things could still change, but hopefully they don't get delayed. But there are some other important things happening in the world right now, so we'll have to wait and see what happens before it becomes 100% official. Now, we also have another PlayStation 5 patent. Even though Sony hasn't talked too much about the PlayStation 5 up to this point other than the solid-state drive, we really aren't too short on PlayStation patents. This one here details a new dynamic interface for launching direct gameplay, meaning that you may be able to customize how you boot into a game. Instead of turning on a game that has you sit through the logo screen, the main menu, etc., you may actually be able to boot directly into what you want. As an example, if you just want to boot into single player, well, you can do that. If you want to boot straight into multiplayer matchmaking, well, you can do that as well. I don't know if you'll be able to customize this the way you want yourself, but this does seem pretty cool and could be a good use for their solid-state drive. Of course, it's just a patent right now, but hopefully when Sony starts talking about new features, this will be one of those talking points. Now, there is one last thing regarding PlayStation before we sign off for today, and I'll make this one quick, but if you're over in Europe right now and you've noticed a slowdown in download speeds for your PlayStation 4, that's because Sony is working with internet providers right now to lower download speeds in Europe, which is supposed to free up internet usage for Europe as a whole. That's a bit unfortunate, to be honest, because for me, I've always had really slow download speeds for PlayStation as it is. I don't know what it is about their service, but they're by far and away the slowest in download speeds for me out of all the consoles, and it's not even close. So I can't imagine how much slower it could possibly be, but this should only temporarily be a thing until the world starts to go back to normal. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.